Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome back to Revival Live. My name is Irfan Shahid. On this episode, I'm joined by my two very special guests, Dr. Abdur-Rafay and NAVEED Hussain. Dr. Abdur-Rafay is a well-known personality in the Chicagoland community, having spoken on issues such as feminism, Islamic revival, and role of Muslims in the West. He also works very closely with the youth, and he gives khutbah in various jamaat around the Chicagoland area. Naveed is an attorney practicing in the state of Illinois. He specializes in the areas of marriage, divorce, and estate planning. Before Naveed came on the show, I asked him to research the new laws being passed in California that can prosecute parents who choose to not accept their kids' gender identity or sexual orientation, or who try to change it. These parents can be tried for child abuse with these new laws. So it's a very serious subject. Inshallah, please enjoy the episode. Jazakallah khair. Let me open it up with a question. You've been practicing medicine in the Muslim community, and you've been working with young Muslims for the past, what you want to say, 15 or so years. What changes do you see from not just like a healthcare perspective, but like just a behavioral perspective? What's going on with our youth? Do you see them, like 20 years ago when we used to hear about LGBTQ, it was like gross and disgusting to us. Have the platitudes changed? Are people more receptive to it? What are you seeing from that?
Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Thanks for inviting me, inshallah. Hopefully this should be a good discussion. I've been involved in the Chicagoland area and the youth scene, universities and colleges and schools for, as you said, 15, 20 years almost. And at least from my experience, there has been a significant trend towards liberalization of the Muslim youth. And at times it's quite scary, to be quite frank. And like you referred to it, like 20 years ago, some of the issues that like we dealt with in school. You went to UIC, I did too. I went to COD and all these other universities. This issues we dealt with was different. It was like, okay, dating issues related to girls. We were concerned about kids praying salah or not. Trying to educate them to be attached to the deen, going to the masjid. It was more of those issues. Now, it's completely different. Now they're so left-leaning, it's unbelievable. They have accepted certain narratives from the left. Okay, and that has been a dangerous trend. So the sensitivities that we used to have in relation to the LGBT stuff or transgender things, that sensitivity is not there anymore. It has become quite acceptable, and it to a point that it's turning into the norm. Oh, I have a gay friend. We never had that, right?
You grew up in our community as well, right?
Yeah,
so, in the Chicagoland youth, right? YMMA days and whatnot. Yeah. So, would you you remember the emotions and sentiments the majority of us all carried, and you're seeing a lot of these family cases. Do you agree with Dr. Abdur-Rafay that there's a huge shift in the emotional spectrum of the Muslim community?
No, absolutely. I mean, I think just like Abdur-Rafay is talking about, that we've definitely taken hold of this ideology, and we're leaning left, but at the same time we're putting ourselves on that spectrum which we don't even belong on, whether we're talking about right, left. The thing is that we have a whole different spectrum. So that being said, yes, I definitely see us becoming more accepting, more tolerant, and I think that's the key word, right, is tolerance. When you become too tolerant, then you have nothing to stand for. And when you become too tolerant about these issues, will it be LGBT or atheism, whatever these things that we're hitting on, you're going to fall into that trap.
SubhanAllah. No, just wanted to finish your thought on the change. When as a counseling the youth, you go to UIC and stuff. I know you do khutbahs there, Dr. Abdur-Rafay. what's the reaction you get when you tell people that no, this is not acceptable? Like, what is the, before you get into like the whole Islamic narrative and first of all, like, this is haram. What's the first reaction you get from most of the kids?
So it's the same. I mean, we used to get that back in the days also. It's like anytime you say such and such is haram, this is the haram police guy coming in and saying this is haram, So this idea that, okay, setting certain boundaries, that these are the boundaries of Islam.
Yeah.
You don't cross it. Simple as that, right? This is what Islam, and going to Naveed's point, this is very clear. Like, we have a different framework of thinking, different framework of judging what is right and what is wrong, to evaluate the halal and the haram, right? To what is good, what is bad. It's a completely different framework. It's on a different pedestal, a completely different view of life altogether. But unfortunately, the kids aren't unable to visualize that.
They don't
accept
have. Are they even aware there is a framework?
I don't think so. It's just like, because they're not taught to think in that manner, to think that Islam is quite different. It has its own principles.
We're not supposed to be in this left and right, right?
Correct. Yeah. So the discussions being, okay, you're left leaning or you're right leaning. You're with the red pill movement, okay, or or you're just a feminist, or you're just a red pill guy. You're Andrew Tate, kind of fellow. So, it's framed in those.
You get automatically labeled.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what do you expect? What do you expect? You go through 12 years of secular education. When you're learning from these types of people, how do you think you're going to be able? That's the lens that they've affixed to your face now. And so how can you think anywhere else? And we don't have the institutions or the people necessary to actually teach them that take those frames off, right? And have some other way that we can view the world. It's an education problem, absolutely.
And are the kids also, being a Muslim family lawyer, do you see that the kids are learning this from the parents when you see divorce cases and whatnot? Tell us, open up that. Let's jump back a little bit and see, like, are the kids, is it just the system that the kids are learning from, or is it the parents as well? When they see how the parents are fighting or negotiating, are they negotiating from secular perspectives versus what the Sharia grants in as their rights in these complex negotiations and whatnot? What are you seeing, like, how the like the family makeup is? It are these are people like saying, hey, what does Allah want from us in this situation? We might not be getting along, but what does Allah want?
No, man. I'm telling you, like, 99% of cases Islam is not being applied.
Wow.
And the problem is that if you don't start with Islam, right, you don't have that prenuptial agreement, you don't have those things in place, and now you're going to file a petition in Western court, what do you expect is going to happen? Right? And so in order for Islamic law to apply, both parties have to agree. 99% of the time, Islamic law is not being used. You're using concepts of marital property, you're using concepts of maintenance and alimony, even the Western perspective of child custody. Islam is not being used whatsoever. And again, we don't have the mechanisms to actually even apply that properly. It's only my generation that we've started to even understand what Western family law looks like. And now, inshallah, I think we could, in the next generation or two, build the systems necessary to try to implement some of these rulings.
So let me ask you about that. So when they come to you, right? You said, okay, this is a divorce situation, because you're mostly divorced. Is that
yes?
accurate?
Mostly divorce.
So when they come to you, they say, look, we want a divorce, and do they basically said, okay, get me this divorce based on American law, and they bluntly just say that, right? Or do they even say, look, or do you say, you know what, there is an issue with Islam here, I got to look into this. You're Muslims, you're coming to me as a Muslim lawyer. Islam has a specific way of dealing with custody, dealing with property distribution, and you tell them these are the issues. What is their reply?
Yeah, so that's a good question, right? It depends who comes to me, right? It depends if you're the husband or you're the wife. Number one. Number two is that most people don't even know what Islam wants. Correct. So it's the first time they're even hearing that Islam has certain presumptions of custody. When Islam treats property a certain way, this is the first time they're ever hearing about it. Now, what happens is they start to justify within themselves that, oh, I live in the West. Western law is what, I got my marriage license through Western law. I can't support myself. My brother, my father, they've left me. What choice do I have? So it's almost like kamzori and like almost like, you know, some type of weakness that, okay, I have to go with Western laws.
Because
So-
it's skewed towards the lady. It's skewed towards the wife in certain aspects.
Yeah,
in terms
yeah.
of
I mean,
Western law,
I
right?
definitely agree with that. And the
Yeah.
way that you have to think about where did
Yeah.
family law in the West come from, right? It came from this idea of union theory, and I talk about this all the time. Union theory that once you're married, you're one person. Islam doesn't say that, right? So right from the outset, the concept of marriage is
Yeah.
off. Right, we believe you're still an independent person. I'm still an independent person. My money's mine. Yours is yours. Yes, we have certain responsibilities towards each other, but Western law turns it on its face, and it's basically protecting the quote unquote housewife, right? And the problem is that by protecting the housewife, you end up kind of hurting the husband, right? And especially when you have kind of these mix of ideologies in the Muslim Western mind of a little bit of Islam, a little bit of West. It is very hard to pull that apart.
They don't reconcile.
You know, you can't reconcile it because the basis is very different.
Now, so I'm going to back that up a little bit. I'm going to say, do they even ask, like, well, should we talk to a sheikh? Should we talk to a scholar?
Barely. I
Barely.
mean, sometimes, look, another big problem that we have is the actual talaq, right? Like, if you have a woman filing for divorce in the Western, filing a petition, okay? Does that mean you're Islamically divorced? No, right?
No.
Because it's the man's job to grant the divorce or to give the divorce. Or you have to go to a qadi or, you know, some panel and have a fasq or something implemented. But a lot of times that's not happening. I'm telling you, there's probably hundreds of women who have gotten civil divorces, but Islamically they're not divorced.
Oh wow, really?
Yes, because, and another thing, again,
So
some of it is to blame the woman,
Okay.
but and the man, you can say, but a lot of it is to blame us ourselves because we haven't implemented the systems to grant fasqs or to have khulas or to have these types of, you know, systems in place to grant these divorces and to get them done.
Basically, they don't know that they have to go to the
Exactly.
let's say the qadi or
Yeah.
the imam, whoever did the nikah, to
Yeah.
go and kind of finish the nikah off,
Exactly.
and saying that the contract is done.
Yeah, and
They have no idea.
They don't have an idea, and I mean they're hearing it from you for the first time.
Sure, yeah.
The other thing too is that men also they're to blame as well because they're not granting the talaq. Even though the woman's left you, the woman's taking half your money, the woman's taking your kid, and you're still gonna hold some pressure over her by not giving her talaq. Like you're the one who's looking like a loser now. You know, so there's that aspect of it as well.
And that's knowingly done, or
Knowingly they're doing it
yeah.
on purpose. That I'm not gonna give you talaq. Go ahead, find some qadi to give you the fasq. Or to,
Really?
yeah, exactly. So they're
I mean-
using that as a, I mean, I get it, right?
Yeah,
There's emotions on both sides. I get it,
Yes,
right?
that's
But I'm
true,
just
yeah.
saying, I'm just letting you know
Yeah,
that this
yeah.
is
Yeah.
a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, subhanAllah, it's scary out there. Well, I mean, so going back to the kids, the kids are obviously picking up on this. They're getting less deen from their parents. They're getting secularized in the schools. Let's ask the question, like, are these kids even, do they want to get married after they see what their parents went through? And what do you like? I'm sure because there's counseling processes in these divorces, right? And the kids, they just see like, why would I ever want to go through this?
Yeah.
Right. So do you see like a lot of young guys come up to you and say like, hey, Naveed, is there a way I can get married without a marriage license?
Oh, of course,
I
of course,
can, I just don't want this whole, secular liberal court order system. Is this a growing trend?
It is a growing trend. And I think there's seeing your parents, seeing your parents divorced, seeing your parents have an unhappy marriage, the content that you're seeing on YouTube with red pill and girl, I hate women and that type of mentality, all of this together, yes, is making men not want to get married. I mean, women too, but no one wants to get married. Marriage is dying in the West because you're taking Allah out of it, right? You're making it an economic institution rather than the religious institution that it's meant to be.
I mean, that's the nature of living in any sort of secular society, because you're influenced by the environment you live in.
Yep.
So whatever happens to the white person next door to you, right, who lives 2 streets down, his family, his kids, is the same thing that crosses over to your block sooner or later. You cannot be insulated from the happenings of living in a society like this.
Not
So
at all.
the problems, drug issues, marital issues, children dropping out of high school, and I see this also is like this issue with not getting married, it's like, they give the same arguments that the Westerners do, the Americans do, or it's like, I don't want to get married, I want to live my life, I don't want to be chained down. It's the same old ball and chain stuff. And marriage is, it's too much work, and then you got to have kids, and you have kids, and you have more problems.
Kids are expensive.
It's all the thing, because in Islam we look at kids as being a barakah. Right, they're a barakah. They bring barakah to the house. It's not monetary issues, and you're right. Everything is turned down to be, okay, what is my financial benefit out of this, or my sensual benefit out of this, whether it's a male or a female. And then with the females stuff, at least what I've noticed especially in college going students, that career becomes a big issue. Is that I need to be a career woman so that if something happens, I can stand on my 2 feet and I don't have to depend on this man. So the feminist
that's natural,
narrative.
right? That's from the survival instinct. They're gonna think that, but because they've been subjected to this environment, and
there is no other.
Ibadah is different.
Correct, but there's no. What I'm trying to say is that, but there's no. They don't see anything else, right? There is no other, going back to.
It's not a lofty goal to have children, and
correct,
right, where the career is the more lofty goal,
exactly,
and that's what feminism is defined for them,
And for the guys, it's obviously if you push the Me Too feminist movement, you will have a natural counter reaction to that, and then the men go towards the right, and they say we are. The red pill stuff, and we got to, then the response is, this is toxic masculinity.
But another thing I would add to the conversation about the career women is that, like you said, I do think it's a natural reaction. Feminism is obviously to blame, but if you zoom out even more, it's secular liberalism, it's individualism, because now the men, the fathers and the brothers are not stepping up to take care of their sisters and their daughters who do end up getting divorced. They're basically left on their own to say that now you have to figure it out on your own. I'm busy with my wife and my kids, and brothers aren't helping their sisters, fathers aren't helping their sisters. So if the family
this is
clan,
becoming a big issue.
It's the main issue.
Really?
It's the main issue because now women don't want to burden their fathers, and the fathers don't even have the capability or the resources to take care of their daughters. Brothers don't have the resources. So it's a failing of the system, right? Because if you don't have the family support, these rest of the hukum of Islam also become harder to implement, right? If you don't have the family system intact, where's the girl going to turn except for herself? Right? Astaghfirullah, but that's the realm we live in.
Well, so what I want to differentiate is this a microcosm, or are we in parity with the larger? Is our community in parity with the wider society?
We're right behind. We're right at their heels. We're right at the heels. Think about even Islamically, when you take over a civilization, you don't destroy the civilization. You don't destroy the institutions. Why? Because you realize in 2-3 generations these kids are going to become Muslim.
Right.
That's what's happening to us. We're living under the guise of this broad society, and they realize that, give it 2-3 generations, they're going to be just like us.
My coworkers say that to me. It's scary.
But it's true. It's true.
They're common people are aware of it. They're like, wait till your women get Americanized. That's what they say. Is that just wait till they get Americanized. You'll have all the same problems. And I think so we're like 5% behind.
Yeah. So they say right now the Western is 50% divorce rate. We're at 33 to 38%.
38%. Wow.
So let me push you back on that because I've. The 50% divorce rate I've been hearing for years.
There's some nuance to it. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. And then, because I don't know if it's 100% accurate. I mean, I'm going to ask you this. I don't know if it is 100% accurate because sometimes, there's separation, right? And the divorce is not actually counted. It's just, if it is counted as, okay, there was someone entering it into the data system.
Yeah.
But, from an anecdotal perspective, I don't see many married people. Is it higher than what is being reported?
Or is it less people getting married?
So I guess there's a way to look at it, right? So I'll just give you some numbers from my perspective. Last year I did 500 consultations by myself. That means 500 couples were unhappy.
Yeah.
Right? Of those, 125 to 150 actually signed up for a divorce. Okay, so I guess what that's telling you is, okay, you have this society. Of that, I'm guessing that 80% are probably unhappy in their marriages. 50% of them came and had the audacity, you can say, to talk to a lawyer. And of that, a certain percentage then actually filed for divorce. So to your point, I think you're right that if you look at it, what perspective are you calling the number a divorce for separation? I do think it's much higher, right? That 38% is the people who actually filed for divorce. But you're right. There's many more who are unhappy, not getting any intimacy, maybe not even sleeping in the same room, and maybe not even living in the same house.
And what about the numbers like of just people who get married off the books and then they're right? So that's also
I mean,
that's not
we don't have
factored
the,
in as
we
well.
don't have
'Cause
that data. Yeah.
So
I'm hearing that's on the rise too.
So how are, when you say it's 30, what did you say?
33 to 38, yeah.
33 to 38% divorce rate.
Yes.
How do you gather that data? Where is
Sure.
that coming
like
from?
especially with the Muslim demographic.
Yeah,
Like,
that's what I'm asking.
Are
is
there
the Muslim
measures
demographic.
like
So there's
is
something
there a
called the
census
Family
thing?
Youth
Yeah.
Institute in Michigan. So the
Okay.
Family Youth
Yeah.
Institute, they send a survey. I mean,
Okay.
that's all it is. That's the only way you can
Yeah,
gather
sure.
data. Let's say
Yeah.
they sent a survey to N300.
Mm.
Of N300, they asked, have you, what's your marital status? Have you been divorced? And that's how they're coming up with these numbers. I don't think we have a full census.
Sure.
I know
Yeah.
there's one called ISPU, right? ISPU is trying to do these types of census, but I don't know those numbers. This is from the Family Youth Institute, which again just sent out a survey, randomized. I don't know how well randomized,
Yeah.
and this is the responses that they've gotten.
Mm.
And this is
Okay.
not my own calculation. I'm just just cherry picking this from that
Sure.
particular institute.
Okay, so I mean, 33% is still pretty bad.
It's bad. It's bad. It's bad. You know,
know,
here's the
yeah.
thing is that, look, there's looking at divorce is
Yeah.
a symptom, of course, but at the same time, what we've done is we have made divorce like the worst thing in the world. It is the worst thing, but at the same time, we're supposed to do it with like with nobility, with some type of gift at the end of a divorce, even, right?
Right.
It says in the Quran you're supposed to
Yes.
give a gift upon divorce, but the way that we treat divorce is so toxic. It's having an impact on children in society. The Sahaba would get divorced,
Yeah.
and they have multiple marriages, but the impact wasn't as big as it is now because of the way that we have the laws and the way that we've adopted Western ideals of marriage.
Yeah,
So let me push you back.
Yeah, please do.
Okay, just on this number,
Yeah.
because you mentioned the Sahaba. The Sahaba
Yeah.
had a lot of divorces.
Yeah.
I mean, some of our Muslim colleagues may not necessarily know that, but it was common. It was something that they would divorce when they married, but they had multiple wives,
Sure.
and they would marry multiple times. There are many narrations of Sahaba having several marriages, but that was not an issue in a society like that.
Sure.
'Cause it was not necessarily looked down upon.
Mm-hmm.
It was part of human existence.
Sure.
Divorces happen, marriages don't work, you move on, you marry somebody else. This is part of life.
Yes.
It is something that Islam says, you should be very, very careful about. Do not use the term talaq
like
jokingly
yeah,
even,
yeah.
right? There are restrictions about how what words you can say, what words you cannot say, and so forth. There are many ahkam, not to go into detail on that, but this was, if you measure the divorce rate, you would probably say, okay, it's more than
Yeah.
30%, right? How do you now, putting this question to you, somebody comes up along and says that, look, yeah, divorce is fine. What's the big deal?
Mhm.
Why are you making a big issue for the Muslim community here in America about the divorce rate when the Sahaba had multiple divorces?
Sure. For me, the
Yeah.
divorce rate is not the problem.
Yes.
To me, is the impact of divorce and the way we treat each other in divorce.
Mm.
Where divorce has become this way to destroy the other person, to take the kids away from the man, to leave this woman on the street. Even it talks about do not kick your women out of the house, right?
Yes.
We talk about not taking children from your man. Like, these are the tactics that us Muslims are using, which has an impact on the children. So for me, it's not necessarily the divorce rate that I have a problem with.
It could also be the reasons for divorce. Like, in the past, it could have been for whatever reason,
Yeah.
like the person wanted to travel or they just didn't get along, personality types didn't click. But are we seeing domestic abuse, substance abuse, ideological influence like feminism, like the woman not wanting to, play the traditional role of a wife,
Yeah.
or the husband not wanting to play the
Of
role
course,
of
of course.
a provider. So that also factors into that
It does.
answer
It
as well.
absolutely does. Like, obviously, think about time of the Sahaba, right? You're much more aligned in terms of values, in terms of your clan, tribe, your area. You know, all of those things are much closer together. Now, yes, it's very difficult to discern even what your potential spouse's values are, what their background is. So, yes, I agree that we do have a bigger array of thoughts and ideologies and, you know, stances that do make these marriages worse. But again, my problem is the way that we're divorcing more than the divorce rate.
Okay. Okay. You know, subhanAllah, like,
No,
go ahead.
I think that's a very good point, and the reason I wanted to bring that out is because, you know, there's a difference between statistically measuring certain things versus the impact that those stats have to the society at large, to the family structure, to our diaspora, let's say, Muslim diaspora living in the West. And it goes back to the same issue here, is that, you know, we are just falling down the same lizard hole as the rest of the non-Muslim communities, right? You know, that's been a major concern. I'm sure for all of us who have been involved in the Muslim community, is that how do you reverse the tide? How do you prevent these things from happening? And there's only so much you can do, because you're treating certain symptoms, right? Unless and until you instill a certain view of life that is different than secular liberal ideas, and that has to be done at a very young age. You know, by the time they're getting in college, they've already been, you know, brainwashed with the liberal ideas,
of course.
you know, of secular ideas, and Allah is out the window, unfortunately.
No, but not just that, the emotional conditioning too. Like,
it is.
I feel bad for them. You know, they were, you know, like when we were kids, we were shown the Roots, the movie, about slavery, right? And you were given an emotional sensation of how cruel this practice was. Right now, that wasn't done for us for LGBTQ, but now it is being done with Pride Month and Brokeback Mountain and all this pop culture, right? So, but you know, I talk to these young kids and they say, you know, we understand it's all haram, but we feel bad for them, and so I'm like, well, where's this coming from? There's also an emotional spectrum. It's not just that you can cover the ideological framework. You got to defend your family, and you know, as a man or as a qawaim of the house and the woman, like, you have to be like, hey, that movie isn't good for you to watch, or that song is not good. Hey, let's stay away from certain programming. And that's getting harder and harder to do with the cell phones and smartphones and you know, TikTok in everybody's hand. That it's a multiple front assault, and for you to just, you know, be like, that the government and the laws are against me, the schools' educations are against me, the media and entertainment is against me. I can, up to a certain point, I can be the qawaim of the house, right? Depending on how much my partner supports me. Up to a certain point, I can teach the kids the right aqidah of Islam, but there's nothing I can do about the government influence and the environmental influence. So, you know, let's take the conversation in that direction with, like, you know, the laws that are going on with California's CA. What is it? AB 957. So let me just go ahead and throw it up on the screen for the viewers. You know, don't look down at your phone if you're driving, people. We're just gonna look at this with Naveed here. Can I make this full screen for you guys? Yeah. Okay, so AB 957, it encourages parents who support their TGI. I don't know what TGI. What is it?
Transgender disease.
Transgender what?
Intersex
children by making it clear that affirming a child's gender identity is part of the health, safety, and welfare of a child. It also allows courts to consider a parent's affirmation of their child's gender identity when making decisions about visitation and custody. So this has huge implications, Naveed. You know, this really, you know, I really wanted to ask you, like, what does this mean? Like, especially in our Muslim community, you know, there's nobody more, you know, versed than you in the whole divorce and custody spectrum. How many ramifications does this have? I can't even begin to think that, but I think it's an important question that needs to be asked.
Yeah.
Well, what's the most important question? Like, if I'm divorcing my wife, and we have 4 kids, and one of the kids is identifying as queer something, and now can that be used? And I'm not okay with it. Can that be used against me in the court that to take the children away
This has
or to
already
limit
happened, though.
visitation?
What the exact example that you gave, it's already happened. There was a couple they're divorcing. The father doesn't want the child to transition, but the mother wants to affirm the gender transition, and now that court is actually in that case is actually in the court system.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's beyond than just now completely sort of legalizing this stuff, this nonsense. But you're seeing once these things go into the court, then now it sets a precedent.
Like,
and,
you
and
can
Naveed,
weaponize. You can even weaponize your own kids. Say that, hey, son, if you don't want to go with your dad or your mom, just look. We know that they're against all this stuff.
Yeah,
just
so
claim it, and then
so
claim that the dad has, tweeted this in the past or posted about, shared this article on Facebook in the past, and you can just wrestle somebody's kids away from them. Like, there's so much to unpack here.
There's a lot to
I think
unpack,
this is the first
right?
conversation.
So,
go ahead.
So this particular law, what it's doing is that it's adding a factor to the determination of what is in the best interest of the child. Okay. So, like in Illinois, for example, a judge has 16 to 17 different factors that they look at to determine custody. What are the wishes of the child? How, what is the distance between the parents? Who supports their education? Who's been the primary caretaker for the last 24 months? Et cetera, et cetera. What California is doing is they're adding this factor, one of many factors, to determine what is in the best interest of the family. So you're right.
Health and safety of the child.
Exactly. So now
Yeah.
you can make an argument to say, Judge, out of the 17 factors, this particular factor is not in my opponent's favor because they are not supporting the health and safety of my child by not allowing them to transition. Right? So to say that could be the factor that turns the case. That's true. It absolutely can be. But it's not necessarily the only factor, but it is a big factor. And to your point as well, is that the morality issues that we as Muslim fathers bring up, right? For example, if our ex-wife gets remarried, do we want our daughters living there? No way. No way. Right. But now if you brought that up in court, you seem like a bigot. You seem like some backwards whatever. Yeah. I don't want my son to be in a house where they watch movies or TV, whatever your moral stance is. Now morality is laughed at in court. So that implication of that is basically they're changing the definition of morality and the definition of what is in the best interest of the child, not based off what you and I think, but based off what the government thinks. That's where the danger is. That the government is now deciding what's best for your child. That's where I see the end of this society.
Oh, subhanAllah.
Yeah. No, honestly. Because now think about it.
But the government makes an issue about all. Yeah, exactly. They take your kids because of you didn't fit the model.
Exactly.
Right? You didn't fit the and in European countries, for example, I don't know if you follow the issues in Switzerland, or Sweden. Sorry, not Switzerland. Sweden,
Finland, Norway.
Sweden. If your family is reported that you're teaching extremist ideas. For us, our values
could be extreme,
could be extremist to the liberal society.
Absolutely.
So there have been cases in Sweden where children have been taken away from their parents because they were teaching them, look, LGBT stuff is not allowed, or you have to wear the hijab, or you have to believe in the morals of Islam. And there has been many cases like this. And I think a couple of months ago there was a case where a child was taken away from the parents. The father died. The mother was not in the picture. It was a big issue that happened. I can't remember the exact.
Was that in Belgium? It was on Twitter.
It was in Sweden. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, these things are already taking place in certain European countries, and if you look at, for example, this guy Hamza Yusuf from Scotland, who became the premier.
Yeah.
Right. He's pushing this same exact law that it would be not allowed if you prevent gender transition. Right.
You can't stop your kid.
You can't stop your kid. So, for example, let's say a Muslim family comes in and it says, you know what, this my kid is going towards this queer stuff. let's take him to the imam, let's take him to the local scholar, let's take him to a Muslim family lawyer or Muslim family guidance person, or just to any peer, and try and help him through this. This would be illegal now. So now you have, and this is and Hamza Yusuf, not Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, the Hamza Yusuf from Scotland, he is pushing for that legislation. And he ran on that campaign of all of the sort of leftist ideas of liberalization of LGBT stuff and making it more prominent in society. So in certain European countries, this is already an issue, and it is eventually going to be an issue for us as well.
I think so too. If you start attacking homeschooling, that's one thing. Making certain things required in a curriculum, that's another thing. So that's why education is so important, because I do think that's going to be something that they come after. That you have to go through the school system and you have to go through this curriculum, or else we're not going to, either you can be arrested, or we're not going to grant you then your high school diploma. That's what I'm scared of, is them taking away ability to homeschool your own children.
Do you homeschool?
I want to. I mean, my kid's 3.5, but I would love to.
Yeah, I homeschooled for
You did?
2.5 years, something like that.
Yeah.
And then I couldn't keep up with the curriculum, and we moved to this neighborhood that has a lot of Muslims in it, and my kids have they developed a lot of friendships with the Muslim girls here.
Okay.
And they wanted to go to school with the Muslim girls. So I felt a little safer with the large Muslim community.
Yeah.
So I went ahead and re-enrolled them. And
I don't know. I mean, my wife and I, we really thought about homeschooling, but it's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
And there's no networks. That's the
correct.
There's no
there's
networks.
no I think they call it co-ops or something like that. Yeah. So I think that was an issue for us, and not everybody can do it. You have to have the patience.
You do.
My
I don't know
sister
if I have
does
the
it.
patience.
My sister does it, and she found
really?
that subhanAllah, she found that even in the non-Muslim co-ops, the children are so well behaved.
Really?
And there's a lot of religious values that she partners with the non-Muslim co-ops as well.
Yeah.
She has a Muslim co-op as well. And obviously because our community is new to this, they're not well organized, and as the Christian or the other,
homeschooling when we grew up was not a thing. We all went to public school, or some people went to Islamic schools, but it was like, these homeschool kids. It was not it was like, they must be weird, you know. Yeah. But I think it's getting quite popular among the Muslim community to really think about.
I think it's necessary. I think we do need to push in that direction to go through homeschooling. I mean, even when you look at private schools, I mean, alhamdulillah for whatever effort they're making, but at the same time, you're still using Western books. You're still Allah is removed from the education of science and math and whatever other curriculums that we have. But we have the opportunity to, make these co-ops and actually teach Islam and teach these quote-unquote secular things through the Islamic lens. And I think we're losing out on that without doing homeschooling.
Yeah,
You got pulled up something?
No. I was just that was just playing producer there and trying to get because the audience gets bored from just one camera angle, so I was trying to mix up the camera.
It took you what? 40 minutes to change the camera?
Yeah. It was still learning, right?
Okay.
It's not like you've been on the podcast with my brother on the Mad Mom Looks with Sim. He's got all the panels around him, and he's a pro. He's been doing this for whatever 6 years. He knows how to switch angles while talking to you, while Googling something.
Exactly.
So it is quite a skill, and inshallah I'll get there someday. But
let me ask you this. Sorry to cut you off. Do you think the Muslim community is realizing the dangers of these things?
Yes, I hope so. Because we have wait lists now at maybe all the major Islamic schools in Chicago, right?
Yeah.
CPSA, IFS, Kindi, COL, Ilm, Montessori, all of these, mashallah, they have a waiting list, right? And so I do think there's a demand, and I think people are realizing that if we don't stop from the educational perspective, we're going to lose our kids.
Well, what about the curriculum? If it's accredited, does it have to inject this stuff even into the Muslim schools?
So there was a law that was passed in Illinois that made it mandatory
for public schools
to teach.
That's only for public schools.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So as early as primary school, if I'm right, or as early as primary school, we have to teach quote unquote LGBT history.
Yes.
So it's a law in Illinois now.
Yeah.
So you go to public school, kids at primary school, they desensitize you from that young age. I said, oh, they're just two dads, two moms, modern family, and so was gay at one point, and that the history of this movement and how it started and all that stuff. So what it does, it forms a you don't have that sort of what do you call it,
visceral reaction.
There you go. Right. Sometimes you eat salad and there's a little bacon that comes in and you're just like, "Pooh, what is this?"
Sometimes what? I don't know what you're eating, bro.
Right? Yeah. I'm really wary of eating salads because you never,
the bacon bits.
Bacon bits are hidden somewhere in the lettuce somewhere. I was like, what is this?
LGBT used to be hidden, but not anymore.
So that visceral reaction is gone, and it goes back to that, desensitizing your children. And taking their innocence away, taking their sensitivity away, taking the natural fitra away from your kids. It's starting at a very, very young age. And this is an age, you don't talk about sexual stuff anyway. You talk about there's a man, there's a female, there's a husband, there's a wife, there's a family, there's brothers and sisters. You don't have that sex talk, right? But from this very age, you make it so acceptable now. And that's being pushed through legislation, and that's the point of all of this. Let
me ask you about that. Can you think of other examples that where legislation influenced the behavior and values of the society?
It always does,
right?
You can speak about this too, Naveed, but legislation. Now, so look, we live in a secular democratic system. Minority majority struggles that happen, right? The society is built on this sort of minority majority struggle. They talk about, look, the majority rules, the majority has this opinion and so forth. But if you look at the laws that are implemented, go back all the way back to the foundation of the country, right? Slavery being legalized, women are not actually women; they're half a woman, half a human being. Black people are not human beings; they're lesser than human beings, right? They're a third or whatever percentage they used to get, etc. These laws were there, and these laws, when you grow up with these laws as the standard, the generations that come through this will all be accepting of this, the normalization of these laws, right? Normalization of the values that these laws push, right? Or even the emotions that these laws push. So you build a society that produces people like that, right? People will say, look, you know what, I'm not a racist, or in the 50s and the 60s, etc. But you grew up in that environment, and you naturally accept the black and white divisions. So laws. Or in other words,
they definitely impact.
They have a significant impact. Same thing with Islam. Like, for example, if you have the ahkam of Islam implemented, you produce generations of people that are muttaqi, right? If you live in a society where you have an amalgamation of Islamic laws and kufr laws, you produce a amalgamated personality, right? A mixed personality. Something is and we see this in the Muslim countries, right? You take Pakistan, you take Saudi Arabia, any of the Muslim countries, there is some parts of Islam are there and some parts of kufr laws are there, and the Muslims are confused from a basic perspective. So, but then if you look at how society is built under an Islamic state or a Khilafah state or the Muslim generations, you produce people like Sheikh, Abu Hanifa, Imam Shafi, etc. They're products of a system. They're products of the Islamic civilization. Unfortunately, that's something we have to realize. Without having the implementation of Islam, it's very, very difficult to produce personalities like this, right? So we end up always dreaming about, let's wait for Salahuddin to come. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. I know I'm drawing.
Well, that's a physical thing, right?
Right. I mean, look, it's an aspiration.
Yeah.
Right. It's an aspiration that we want personalities like these.
Right.
But those personalities are product of a system.
Right. So I think
Yeah.
like Abu Hanifa and, was a great example.
Yeah.
Like, are we gonna have a figure like Abu Hanifa come and or like Imam Ghazali revitalize the connection to the Islamic to ijtihad or fiqh and usul fiqh the way he did? You know, what you're trying to say is that we can't wait for that.
No, you can't.
We can't be waiting for some figure. You know, this is. If you don't, the issue is coming to your bedroom in your house, and that mentality needs to be thrown out the door.
Correct.
And you know, you need to get out on all fronts. You need to defend your family, protect your family, make sure the intellectual framework is there, so that your family is connected to the wahi and understands that obedience to Allah and following the wahi of Allah to Rasul Sallallahu is your success in the akhirah and afia in the dunya. You know, like what you know, as much as we can get it in this life. And if you can't just have one person holding on to that in the family, like one component of a family is enough to disrupt the balance. You know, you can you could have like a father and mother that are Islamic and you know they're doing their ibadah and everything, but and you have 3 kids, but you have a 4th child who is not part of the he's just not absorbing the culture and absorbing the ideas and absorbing the sensitivities and values the way the rest of the family are. It can disrupt the whole balance, and then it can cause problems that lead to the separation of the man and wife and break up the whole family. Naveed, let me just bring you back in here and just ask you, like, are you seeing LGBTQ issues and liberalism in the children, coming into the children through the schools, causing problems in parents and marriages? So is this happening? Like, are the schools contributing to our divorce rates?
So
it might not, but
yeah, it might not. So here's my thing,
I'm
right?
just
For me,
thinking out loud.
LGBT is such a
whether it's LGBT, it could be feminism, it could be
exactly, but
it could be
the point
marijuana,
make,
which
the
is
point
huge,
I want to make, right, is LGBT is a red herring. At the end of the day, we talk about it so much because it's sensationalized, because it's so scary. But really, it's a bigger problem behind it, right? Be it secularism, be it atheism, be it individualism. Like, these are the bigger problems, in my opinion. And it's just sensationalized because of sexual intimacy and, that visceral reaction that you talk about, right? But the visceral reaction should be godlessness and atheism and kufr and shirk, right? Like, we're not visceral to that anymore, but we are visceral to LGBT. So that's, I guess what I would say is that the underlying issue...
So the sensitivities change.
Yeah,
so, that's the thing, because we became so accepting of secular values.
Exactly.
Then you hit one barrier, you become desensitized. Then you hit another barrier, then you desensitize.
But now you forgot what the actual problem was.
Exactly. Yes.
Absolutely.
The root issue is not there.
Exactly. Okay. Exactly. So I guess what my point is that I don't necessarily see LGBT having a problem in divorces and affecting the parents. I do think that the parents not agreeing on how to raise their children, I definitely see as a big problem, right? Okay. I think it's, as we kind of mentioned earlier, that you're seeing men go more right and you're seeing women go more left, right? And so I do think that can play a role in how they decide to raise their children. And the other problem too is that, again, I'm going to go back to the men, right? Because it's our job, like you said, to be the qawam. We're supposed to be in charge, but we're at work all the time. We don't come home till 7 p.m. We're fixing the community. We're fixing everybody. And the woman is the one who is now raising the child. Before, one of my teachers said this, that before at the madrasa, the dad used to come and bring the kid to the school and enroll them in school, check out the curriculum, make sure everything is good. Yeah. Now what happens is that the dad doesn't even know what the teacher's name is, what curriculum they're learning. The wife is the one who enrolls them. They're the ones checking out the curriculum. Basically what I'm trying to get at is that we have no control over our own children, right? So that being said, I do think that these Western ideologies are impacting the children and thereby impacting the parents, but I see it as more from the parents down to the kids than I do see it from the parents up, or from the kids up to the parents, if that makes sense.
I mean, I think that would be natural because the parents are the one that set the tone in the house.
Exactly.
How much TV time, what do you read, what do you don't read,
who your friends
are,
yes,
when do you get your cell phone or not, and so forth. Those, the parents said that, if your child grows up just having a cell phone while he eats dinner, that's his norm now.
Yeah.
And if you take the cell phone away, he just throws a fit.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, you know, because I think the parents. I used to teach at Sunday school for a while, and you know, I saw a whole sort of spectrum of kids. You know, there were kids who were doing hifz, and there were kids who couldn't even read the Quran properly, or there were kids who prayed Salah, etc., and there were kids who really did not know much about Salah. You know, but they were in Sunday school. You know, so the parents would send them there to, okay, at least they'll get some sort of Islam. But you have that spectrum, you know, and then this was a high school class and so forth. So, you know, there was a case where a kid, he was in a play at school, and I think I've shared the story with you, I don't know, with you before or not.
You told me this, yeah.
So he was in Romeo and Juliet, in high school. Okay, and for some reason he mentioned it, and I was like, okay, what role are you playing? You know, I got curious. Okay, he says I'm playing Romeo. So I was like, okay, do you know what role? What do you do in this play? We've all seen this play, right?
Well, yeah,
in school,
you read Shakespeare in 9th grade in American high school. So.
Some schools have the play and so forth. So he says I'm playing Romeo, and I was like, okay, there's a kissing scene in the play. Right, and he's like, "Are you doing that?" He says, "Yeah." And his Sunday school. I'm like, "Yo, man, you can't do that, right? You know, you can't. This is not allowed. You know, this is haram in Islam." And you know, I spoke to him, sat him down, talked to him for an hour, and he's like, "Look, I've already done the rehearsals, this, that, etc. The play is in a couple of weeks, and so forth." And I'm like, "Hold on a second. You've done rehearsals."
How many rehearsals were there?
So I don't, you know, I didn't ask the details, but you know, you know what's going on in your head, in your head.
Right.
And then finally I asked him, "Are your parents okay with this? Do they?" He says, "Yeah, my parents are okay with me playing Romeo and Juliet." And I said, No. Are they okay with you doing that scene, and they know that this scene is there? So he was a bit hesitant, but he said, "Yeah, I think they're okay." But at the end of the day, I said, "You can't do this. You know, you should not do this. This is you're a Muslim. You know, you have certain Allah, values. You have to fear Allah, and blah 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 blah." You know, at the end of the day, I felt it was just going through one ear, coming out the other. You know, because he's already invested.
Yeah, I mean, his parents are fine. You know,
who the hell are you?
Exactly.
Right? Who are you, a Sunday school teacher? That seems me, you know, once a
Look,
week.
this is where I want to circle back.
So let me finish the story. So then, following a couple of weeks later, I see him because it was after the play was done. I said, "Did you do the play?" I said, he says, "Yes." "Did you do the scene?" He says, "Yes." "Were your parents there?" "Yeah, they were there." "Did they say anything afterwards?" And he says, "No." So the point being of this whole story is that, I think everybody gets the point, is that if the husband and wife, the father and the mother, if they're not setting the standard, they are not praying, they're not reading the Quran, they're not excusing themselves from watching TV and stopping it and going and praying your Salah, what do you think the kids are going to do?
100%.
Right? They're just going to copy you. Right, and then you can go and then you can come and blame. Look, the masjid is not doing enough for our children. Right, it's not running enough programs, and we're concerned about our children, and so on and so forth. Which, fine, yes, that's true. The masjid has to do something. The youth programs have to be there. It has to be there. But what's happening at home? Right, what's happening in the family?
And that's gonna be 1 or 2 hours a week. Right.
Yeah, you know,
and the system's going to be with your kids for 8 hours a day.
Exactly. Yes.
What's the masjid going to you know, 40 hours versus 1 hour at the masjid? Like, you have to use that select 90 minutes that you get, you know, between dinner and homework and laundry and chores. You have maybe like 40 minutes to an hour and a half if you're lucky with your kids a night.
Yeah,
a night. I would say a week. So
subhanAllah, right? So if you know you're not, you know, they want to use that with their friends, with social media. You got the phones. Everything is fighting your kids away from you. And if you're not using that daily reinforcement of there's a Jannah, there's a Nar, there's a Allah, there's a Day of Judgment, there's, you know, these are our values. This is what we believe in. This is Quran. This is Sunnah. There's a reason why Quran has dhikr of Jannah and not. It's constantly repeated. One ayah on each could have intellectually done the job, but it's repeated so often that human beings, our condition is that we get influenced by the dhikr of something, and you have to be the dhikr for your kids. And it just goes back to prove your point that
so let me take this back to Naveed. So how do you see, this is the Muslims, we aligned with the right prior to Bush, at least until 9/11 happens, right? And they were all gung-ho over, okay, we're going to support the right wing because we were conservative values and so forth. And I don't know if you remember the 2001 election you had. One of the biggest things that the Muslim community said that, okay, we're going to vote as a collective towards the right, towards for the Republican Party because of conservative values, and because on the left, on the Democrats, there was a Jewish person, Lieberman.
Right.
Lieberman.
Joe Lieberman.
Joe Lieberman was a vice president candidate with what's his guy's name?
Gore?
Al Gore. Yeah. So those are the two main reasons that were offered. So we put our lot with the right wings, and then Islamophobia happens, reaction happens. Oh, right wings out to kill us. So let's align with the left.
Yep.
Okay. And I remember several years ago, one of the brothers, he asked me, who do you think is the biggest threat, the right wing or the left? And this was, and I said the left, because the right wing, they'll physically harm you, Islamophobia, the Islamophobic attacks, this, etc. The natural reaction for the Muslims is that they go back to Islam more naturally. The left will kill you with their ideas. Will take your values away. Will take your iman away. Right? So I remember distinctly saying that, look, the left is more dangerous. And at that time, many Muslims, including community leaders, politicians, leaderships in the local communities, they were like, no, we gotta go with the left. And I had to say, I said,
I told you so.
I told you so, right?
You never want to say it, but sometimes you got to say it.
But it really pains me because 15 years, 20 years later, our situation is because we put our faith in the liberal Democrats and so forth, right? Now there's another pushback now because of what's happening. And where do you see what the Muslim community is trajecting towards?
I mean, I think we're going to have this dichotomy, right? I think that's the problem, is that we're going to have two extremes of Muslims. Kind of like the Jews, they have like the revivalist Jews, and then they have the Orthodox Jews.
Yeah.
I think that's what we're going to fall into, to be honest. I think that, yes, you have swings, you have the cyclical nature of history, which always is going to repeat itself. But I do think that because we're living in America, you're going to see people outside of these Islamic pockets, they're going to continue to go left. And maybe the Islamic pockets go right. And I think you're going to have this dichotomy even within our own communities, but more so in the nation itself. So I don't know if we're going to swing back entirely as a group to the right, but I think whoever stayed here is going to stay on the left, and then half of us are going to swing back to the right. And that's a problem, I think, as well.
I was talking to one of the major imams here in the Chicagoland community, and I was telling him, talking about this very subject, and I said, look at the hatred between CNN and Fox News, the right and the left. Just look, they can't stand each other's guts. From all the co-workers and neighbors that I know that are not Muslim, they can barely stand to be around each other.
Yeah, marriages don't happen.
Right.
In
right. You don't find a Republican marrying a Democrat. And
it's a
families
question.
split up along these lines.
Yeah.
They're like,
it's become that toxic. Really.
It's become that toxic. The divide is the social fabric has torn so far apart that if the Republican side of the individuals in the family that are Republican cannot tolerate the Democrat individuals in the family. Now, this is what I asked them. Like, why are you, by inviting these Democrats to the member before Jummah, why are you reflecting that same divide on us? Because when you justify that that Islam allows a position on this matter that we can throw our lot in with the left or we can throw our lot in with the right. The problems that America has, you're taking a giant mirror on those problems and you're tilting it and you're reflecting it from the mirror right onto our Jamaat, that giant Jamaat at IFS that you see 2,000 people sitting there, right, or whatever it is, right? You are taking those problems and you're taking a mirror and you're just reflecting all of those problems back on us. And I know it's in my family too. I love all my cousins. I love them so much. But we all know the truth. There's some lefties out there. You know who you are, right? And we can't talk about anything besides how's the cake, how's the samosa, how's the lassi, how's the biryani. Oh, it's delicious. Whose birthday is when? Happy birthday, right? Right? That deeper bond, that deeper bond that keeps us connected. That blood, that ideas are stronger than blood.
Yeah.
And when you allow for these things to happen, there's these divides are going to happen in our families. So whether it's not divorce, it doesn't have to be divorce.
I'm saying divide and conquer.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be just divorce that's going to break up the family. It's this whole left and right spectrum that's going to break up the family. Yeah. I don't think our leadership knew what they were getting into. They didn't have that foresight. I actually talked to some of the leadership like 15 years ago and said, I'm just a 25-year-old guy. What do I know? But look at what's going on. And they're like, it's going to happen.
You're 50?
15 years ago.
Yeah, 15 years ago, you're 25, you're 50 now.
I'm 40, so whatever. I must have been 20. It was right around when I got married, so I think it was probably 20 years ago. And they were just like, we don't know what else to do. We don't know what else to do. And what my message, and we're part of Revival Live, our show, is that, no, there is a path forward. The path forward is enjoin the good, forbid the evil. Stay true to Islam. Invite them to Islam. Invite LGBTQ to change. Okay? We don't have to, we're not going out there and doing some kind of discrimination and bashing and, whatever, whatever physical violence or threats. No, we want Jannah for them. That's our position as Muslims. We want Jannah for everybody. We're inviting you to change. We're telling you, hey, there's a judgment. Your Rabb made you. We are Muslims. We are a Muslim community. It's not just me or this show as an individual. The more important that as a community, we adopt this tone, this doctrine that we invite others to change. We're not adopting left and right spectrum. We're we're Muslims.
But
that's who we are.
To say that is extremism.
Well, I mean, but
it's that's
part of my identity as a Muslim.
Because the response is, and I've heard this, it's like, why do you got to be so vocal about your religion?
That's me, because we want to go to Jannah.
Keep it to yourself, right? Religion is just a personal issue.
Right, but so as Muslims, we go back.
No, but I'm saying these are arguments. Kids say.
Right. We have to go and take our success in the dunya and akhirah from the Quran. Define it by those measures, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, and I don't want to state the ayah out of context or mistranslate it, but we're the best ummah because we enjoin the good and forbid the evil, right? And if we are going to be that best ummah and enjoying the good and forbidding the evil, what does it mean? It means that we're going to tell these people, hey, they have to change. We want Jannah for you. We want the best for you. We're not here to harass you. But we do practice Bashir wa Nadira. We invite and warn that, hey, there are consequences to this stuff, and we invite you to Jannah. We invite you to the ibadah of your Rabb. Get your head on the ground, do sujood, go back to your ikhlas, reflect on it. This message has to be adopted as a community by all the imams, by influential figures as yourselves, by and this will protect not only our families, ourselves, our families, our community. It'll protect our ummah, but and understanding the root problem of individualism, secularism, all these feminisms, and all these other isms. That's the intellectual framework of rejecting those things, coming back to Islam as an aqidah, and then that's the intellectual framework. But in the actionable, in the ma'amulat, the actions that we take, we invite and we warn.
Right, there's negation first, right? You have to do la ilaha illallah, right? You have to take away first. And to that point, I would say that two really good books. One is Patrick Deenan, How Liberalism Failed.
Yeah.
That's a really good book. And Charles Taylor it's a really long book about the secular age, right? So kind of understanding where this comes and the failings of, like, to Abdur-Rafay's point, that exact thing. It's a private thing. Religion is private. It's between you and yourself. Well, where did that idea come from, right? It's coming from the last 500 years, really, 1500s till now, from the Enlightenment. That's a post-Enlightenment thought. And, this book, I'm sure other scholars have written about it as well, but it really breaks down that ideology. So if we don't even understand the response to that question, how are we going to answer our kids, So I 100% agree with you. But at the same time, these things have to be removed before, like, the nur of Islam can actually, like, illuminate from our hearts.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
We have to reject the kufr ideas before we can project the Islamic ideas.
It's funny you guys mentioned this, is that almost 20 years ago, when we used to discuss these ideas, in school and colleges and so forth, because I wish to discuss this. Look, secularism is not neutral. It's and all these ideas. I mean, it's been written and so forth. But Muslims, we were not looking at it in that lens. And I remember having these discussions almost 20 years ago. When I kind of started to get into the dawah stuff and etc. And at that time, it was people was like, what is you talking about? What is these sort of philosophical discussions you're having? Because at that time, speaking about secularism, speaking about the nation-state concept, speaking about the self and state and the role of religion and role of how religion is molded to fit the state, the nation-state model, and identity issues, identity politics, etc. This was something that we as a community, at least here in the United States, were not accustomed to hearing. At that time, discussing how long should your beard be and how long should your pants be above your ankles, etc. Those were the sort of random sort of debates we were having. But the root issues of these ideas, you were seen as left field, because this is not what we want to discuss. So alhamdulillah, what I see, I see that alhamdulillah we're discussing these things more. And I do, I know we've been bashing this situation here for a while, but there is a positive trend also, right? Where there are certain sections within the Muslim community that are waking up to some of these things that we used to discuss almost 20 years ago, which is a good thing.
And it's really organic too.
And it's organic, yes. And that's the thing, is that I think there were, especially our generation, yourself, myself, and Irfan, etc. As we are having our own families now, I think, especially for the ones who have been involved in the Muslim community, in the dawah and all that stuff, at least we can see that there is a positive trend in this area, because you're discussing these sort of fundamental issues of how does Islam fit in the normal in the world? Does it even fit in the secular model? Do we need to look for something different? Do we need to look for a different way of existing? And, what will be our role be in the West? And then obviously from that we see how do we deal with these sort of day-to-day problems we're facing, right? So alhamdulillah, I think there is a positive trajectory in terms of the intellectual elevation of the Muslim community. But obviously this is not to negate the problems we have on the ground, right? Yeah. The stuff that you see on a day-to-day basis and so forth. But these are all a consequence of us adopting a secular way of life, really. I mean, we say we're Muslim, but in fact we have adopted secularism. Islam has been reduced to a secular religion, essentially. Yeah.
There has to be a dual approach, right? You need the top-down intellectual understanding and approach and understanding what's going on, but you also need the grassroots as well. Like, yes, we need to connect to Allah. We have to make sure that we have the ibadah, we have the spirituality, we have all that, but we can't divorce that from the top-down political and social understanding of what's around us. And what happens is that, you know, again, we're supposed to be a middle path, right? Whether it's right, left, whether it's spiritual and political, however you want to frame it, we need to stay within the middle. And as long as different parts of our community are addressing those issues, like you said, I do think that the future of Islam, especially here, right, where we are right now, from this point literally and expanding here, I think that there's a lot of hope and there's a lot of positive impact. Just within 5 miles from here, how many masajid do we have? How many madrasas do we have? How many Islamic schools do we have?
10 or 12.
Yeah, we still have Islamic Foundation. That was it.
Yeah.
Roosevelt Road.
Yeah.
Oh, you're doing that, Roosevelt? Are you the?
That's my wife.
So he's got a thing going on. Roosevelt Road is better than what?
Yeah,
what is it?
Roosevelt Road over Divan.
Or
any
Divan
day.
Avenue.
Oh yeah.
Dude, there was Medina Market and Islamic Foundation.
Yeah.
That was it. That was it.
Yeah.
20 years ago. This
Exactly.
was it,
I've been here 38 years.
Wow.
Almost all my whole entire life I've been in this
Western
community.
suburbs.
5 mile radius, and you know, I've seen it change. You know, we used to know every single face at the masjid at IFS.
Yeah.
And then CPSA opened up, and now it's like sometime post 9/11, so many people were moving here, like you lost track. And then now it's just like there was one point like the old crowd would recognize each other, and now we're just like all lost faces. And then, you know, I see friends that I saw 40 years ago, like randomly at like the dry cleaner or something, and you know those people know who they are if they're watching this. That really happened last week. Like there was one friend I hadn't seen in 35 years. But yeah, subhanallah, like there is a great revival happening on the positive side. We need the support, we need the energy and the synergy between the masjids, between the groups, to really adopt this message of that no, we are a community that's defined by what we enjoin to be good and forbid to be evil, what we value and what we believe in relation to our akhirah, right? That we want our kids to get married to each other, to have fruitful marriages, right? We don't want them to fall, you know, even if they're going to fall in love with some other, you know, Muslim boy or girl at school. We want that assurity that that person is also a taqwa and is intellectually grounded in the aqeedah of Islam, the values of that Muslims traditionally hold, and that, you know, these are natural things that are going to happen. It's not something you can stop. But we want that community doctrine to be built, that no, it's not a narrative of tolerance, it's a narrative, the narrative that defines our community is a narrative of invitation and warning and dawah and wanting good and khair for the wider society. And I think that if we follow this approach, and if, you know, all those imams, you know who you are, if you adopt this in your language and you know what to reject, because you can't do this isolated from one another. You can't say that I'm
walk both paths.
Right, I'm going to walk both paths. You can't straddle both sides of the fence on this issue. You're just going to confuse your youth. You're not going to be ideologically aligned. You're not going to have intellectual integrity, right? Intellectual credibility. It's going to be a confusing, conflated message, and you're just going to, you know, your youth are going to leave you. And those, you know, those that have some, you know, grounding, they will stay, and the most will leave. Unfortunately, that's what I
absolutely. And to your point about marriage, right? Like, obviously we all know this, right? Like, family is the basic unit, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so that's really what I'm trying to push right now. Is obviously, yes, unfortunately I divorce hundreds of people all the time, but I'm trying to supplement that. So we have, you know, for example, the nikah masterclass, right? So that's something that we're trying to teach Muslims about how to get married, the Islamic rulings, get a prenup so that you can implement Islamic law. You know, we have this third space that we're trying to start called Oasis. We have like these different things that we're trying to impact the family unit and help Muslims get married. And I think we need to be careful of not being so conservative in this regard when it comes to marriage, that we give some space. Like, the best marriages that I've seen are through MSA. Okay, I'll be honest. I got married through MSA, okay? And because there was a framework where you can kind of scope people out. Okay, I know what this girl's like. I know what this guy's like. I see their friends. I see how they interact with people. I see how studious they are. But we don't have that anymore because we don't have these communities to filter people out, right? So what I'm trying to get at is, like you said, if your son or daughter does fall in love with a Muslim in the right setting, like, why are we making it harder for them, right? Obviously, if everything aligns, Let's push marriage. Let's
You're not,
make it easier
you're not
for our
saying
children
they're,
marriage.
They're
Dating,
just to be
no.
yeah,
No,
exactly.
no,
Just
I'm
to
not.
be,
Yeah, no, no.
you're not promoting dating.
I'm not promoting dating.
Right,
Let's make.
right.
I'm not promoting
No,
haram
no.
relationships.
No, but obviously, if there was
But-
if there was a group of girls at an MSA, and this is the batch that I have, that's a valid, that's a plausible nikah for me.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try to pick the girl that I see doesn't talk to any
Exactly.
other guys,
Yeah.
or has the best adab and
Yeah.
maybe modesty, haya, whatever my criterias are. So
How are you going to figure that out?
these
from
are
Minder?
natural, right?
Exactly.
These are instincts, right?
You
And
can't figure that out from Minder. You have to figure it out from some
real life
examples.
experience,
And
right?
the massages are not helping, right? Because they're obviously, look, the masjid is not the place
It's not.
necessarily.
It's yeah. It can only fill so
But
many roles.
the
right?
Muslims do need to figure that out, and how are we going to make it conducive for men and women to get married? Because I do see a lot of Muslim women marrying non-Muslims.
Wow.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely.
This is on the rise.
It's on the rise.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Why? Because they treat me well.
Yeah.
They're going to be the feminist, type, and let's do everything 50-50. That's what they want.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a crisis, man. That's a crisis. How are we going to, they always blame Muslims to say, oh, you guys are only increasing in number
Yeah.
because you have so many kids. Yeah, that's part of the system. That's what we want to happen.
Right.
That's why Allah
Right.
says to have children and to get married, because we want Islam to spread. That's not a
Right.
bad thing.
Right.
Right. So that being said, we need to facilitate marriages and keep the family unit strong.
Let me ask you one more question, one more dynamic. What about father-daughter relationships? Are you seeing?
Hold on, before you answer that, let me actually.
Go ahead.
No, well, because you mentioned prenup. So
Yeah.
explain what do you mean by prenup? Prenup before the nikah.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. So we know that Islamically, marriage is a contract.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not a union. Okay. It's a contract between a husband and wife to say that I am giving you X amount of mahar, and in exchange, I'm going to provide you support. I'm going to pay for your food, clothing, blah blah blah. You're going to provide intimacy. That's the basics of this contract. You can add and subtract.
Purpose of the unit is to produce children.
Sure.
That's
You can add, subtract whatever
Sure.
things that you want from this contract. A prenuptial agreement is a quote unquote legal document, Western legal document, that you can enter with your spouse, future spouse, to say, look, if we get divorced, this is what's going to happen. Not necessarily with the kids, but at least with the finances. Look, whatever's mine is mine, what's yours is yours. I'll make sure that I pay the mahar. Right? So it protects the man because not half your property's not going away. It protects the woman because they're going to get their mahar. And that's the other issue, is that when you sign that nikah nama, before, at the day of the masjid, you're signing this one-page paper, $50,000, that's not going to be enforced in court.
Yeah, it doesn't.
It
but the
doesn't-
prenup.
But the prenup can.
So the prenup, when you're doing these, when you're doing
Yeah.
these prenups, or where you're informing the newly
Yes.
the new couple, you're saying the prenup has to be according to Islamic law.
That's
That-
here's the
that's
thing.
what you're.
There's two things,
yeah.
right? Because Islamic law isn't very stringent, right? You have the basics, like I said. You
Yeah.
need to. You can't enter an Islamic contract to say that I'm not going to provide you intimacy, right? Like that'd
not
be a
allowed.
void contract,
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
But if in your contract you say, look, for every year that we're married, I'll give you $10,000 if we get divorced. Okay, there's nothing in Islam that says you do that. But now, through agreement, in that prenuptial agreement, you have agreed to that particular condition. That quote unquote makes it Islamic. The whole point is that Islamically, you need to decide up front what happens at the end. If you don't decide, yes, the defaults of Islam will enter,
Yeah.
but you can change those defaults say fit. So yes, the Islamic paradigm is, the three different things, right? One is marital property.
Yeah.
Right? The definition of Western marital property is anything you acquire from the date of marriage to the date of divorce gets divided.
Correct.
Islam doesn't have that. There's no such
50-50.
thing.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's no- yeah.
The second thing is post-divorce support, alimony.
Mm-hmm.
Islam doesn't have alimony. Western laws do. Right? You also have.
But you have to take care of the iddah period.
Yeah, of course. You have to take care of the period.
Yeah.
But let's say that in the marital section, you agree that, you know what, you don't get 50%, but for like I said earlier, every year you get X amount. Okay, nothing wrong with that. Maybe in the maintenance you say, you know what, fine, for 1 year after the divorce, I'll give you X amount of money. Okay, fine, no problem. For the mahar, whatever the terms are, you can negotiate and expand the rights that Islam is giving you and put that as part of your prenuptial agreement. So yes, I always tell the default Islamic rules, but as long as you two agree, there's no gharar, meaning there's no ambiguity, and you're not replacing the basic necessities of a marriage, intimacy, family support, etc. Go ahead.
Do you find some people will say, okay, you put this in the prenup, you're not going to marry a second wife?
Yeah, I mean that would actually go in the nikah contract, but
contract,
yeah.
So
People do that.
People do that.
Yeah, I mean now
Okay.
people do that.
Okay, so there were a couple, in my personal experience, I saw this happen like twice, and the RISTA process broke down because of the prenup, the introduction of the prenup clause. Like,
Good.
They said no, it was like, you don't trust us. There was this whole mentality, and I saw that happen twice. Do you see that? Is that a deal breaker for people?
Sometimes it is.
Does it bring up trust issues?
I think it's a good thing. If your marriage breaks or your engagement, quote unquote, breaks because of prenup negotiations, good. It's
no,
better.
just the fact that they wanted a prenup.
Yeah, but that's what I'm trying to get at, right?
Yeah.
If you don't have the maturity to discuss what happens at the end of this contract, if there's an end of this contract, don't enter into the contract. That's my. I mean, I know that might sound harsh, but that's my perspective. That if you can't talk about finances, which is the essence of marriage, you can't talk about what happens to my property, your property. Then how are you going to survive this marriage and any ups and downs?
Right.
So my thing is that I'd rather you figure it out at the prenup negotiation stage rather than figuring it out when you guys hate each other in a divorce.
I was pushing this.
No, the other thing, I think this educating the Muslims about what a nikah is critical, because many kids have no idea. They say, okay, we're just gonna get married and everything is gonna be hunky dory and so forth. They don't know, or if they know about the rights, it's more towards, okay, my right is the woman's right. This is more publicized. Okay, I don't have to cook. I don't have to clean. I don't have to take care of the kids. Your money is my money because you're responsible for my maintenance, and in return I don't have to do anything about it. It's that sort of a narrative there. But this course that you have coming up, when is it?
So we offer it 3 to 4 times a year. Yeah. It's online, so it's myself, Sheikh Joe Bradford. I don't know if you heard of him, and another guy named Imam Mahad from Houston. Okay. So the 3 of us, we have this going on pretty often. We also have another conference coming up soon as well. But we talk about the Islamic perspective of what are the rights and responsibilities in marriage from the Islamic and legal perspective, as well as from the divorce, Islamically and
this is a classroom type program, or is this like a seminar?
Online. It's a 2-day, 8-hour course.
Okay.
Yeah, 4 hours Saturday, 4 hours Sunday.
Okay, so hold on.
Yeah.
All right. So for the audience, check it out. I mean, plug it in, man.
I was actually pushing this to certain scholars, and those scholars who know who they are. I was pushing this 10 years ago.
Who they are? What are you doing?
They know this. They know this because they were in certain positions. I was telling them our community needs nikah education and prenup, because the secular court system is going to be leveraged by a nefarious party. Whether it's a husband or wife, doesn't matter, but it can be, and it's going to cause, have havoc for generations going forward.
100%.
And if you don't start educating people on how to accommodate as much ibadah of Allah as possible before a nikah starts, and prenups are part of that strategy, then you're going to have a lot of problems. And there's a stigma against prenups. There's a stigma against prenups in Western culture that's been adopted by Muslims. And if you don't remove that stigma, you gotta say no. These things are good. Like, you have the right not to do it, and you can go in blind. But how much do you really know? Like the amount of things that we're exposed to today. How much do you really know a person? Like, we used to get married, like, oh, so and so's daughter is good. I know their family. The family is good. That doesn't mean anything today. It means zero today. And before, like, you would marry off your children to some other family, like you do your batbaki or whatever, right? You do the risha, like before, when your kids were like 5. Oh, I know the family's good. It has zero meaning today. It has zero weight, and these are not the right measures of selecting spouses today. And unfortunately, they're still, they're still used to coerce and influence decision making. And but if the imams and everybody, if they adopted this proper Islamic education and remove the stigma from this, I think we'll see more stable marriages. And divorce ruins people's life, right?
Does,
it financially ruins people.
Oh my God, death and divorce, right?
I mean, it ruins them emotionally. The rebound, all of that, it's just destructive behaviors. You see so much more come out and if you could prevent that by aligning values, aligning expectations, aligning, responsibilities through programs such as these, you're gonna do yourself a huge favor by producing generations of better Muslims, and you'll get that sadaqah jariyah in their grave. If you did this right, and those, the husband and the wife both help protect the ibadah of the children, and those children produce, better offspring. This is all sadaqah jariyah in the grave, right? You're just doing yourself a favor. Like, it needs to be adopted as a community. You can't, because it's a social issue, can't be like, oh, I'm just going to read more additional ibadah. It's not an individual issue. It's a social issue. It's a community-wide issue. So that's why we need those imams and masajid to, really remove the stigma and build that intellectual framework.
One thing is that we rely a lot on the imams, but really only a select few actually respect our scholars, right? When you look at the broad Muslim society, people don't care if you're a sheikh or you're an alim or whatever you are, or you're the imam of the masjid. Like, honestly, the thing is that pull, that the respect that we have of our, elders and our scholars is missing from the vast majority of the ummah. And again, I think that's the Western brainwashing as well, in terms of, when you think about like Europe and how Europe fell and the churches fell, our desis kind of took that, mullahs and whatever, they kind of looked at all of that. So I agree with you that the scholars need to make it a prerequisite that if you're going to get married through me, if I'm going to do your nikah, then you need to take this class. That's absolutely one thing.
Or at least just educate them. Okay,
Exactly.
This is what you're allowed to do. This is what you're not allowed to do. This is what it means to be a wife and a husband, and so forth. No, that's a very valid point.
One thing I want to ask you was that, as a lawyer, then why? And I don't know if this is an assumption I'm making. Why are these Muslim clients coming to you as a Muslim lawyer?
I think they just
If they're not going to a Muslim sheikh, or Islamic sheikh, then why are they coming to a Muslim lawyer?
No, I think that's a really good question. I mean, I think one of it is reputation, right? Number two is that they look at it from the cultural perspective that, they understand the issues of mahar, they understand the issues of jewelry, they understand those types of things. And also it comes to trust, right? Because I mean, it's divorce law is one of those areas where there's so much emotion that these non-Muslims will take full advantage of you. They'll make you spend $30,000, $50,000, $100,000. Oh yeah, you hate this guy? All right, let me help you screw them even more, right? But inshallah, I'm hoping that, I say this before, but like, I hope I remind you of Allah. I hope I remind you of what Islam actually has to say, so that maybe you do divorce better and not fall into this, revenge trap, right? So that's a good question. I don't know why you come to me, but
I'm happy they come to you. I'm happy that there's a Naveed there that's telling people, why don't you go to counseling first before you come to me? And
I mean, we need people who are grounded in Islamic principles.
Right.
I mean, I deal with, obviously my field is much different. I'm dealing with diseases and surgeries and all of that stuff. But you want to have a Muslim doctor who knows sensitivities. There's a certain respect. There's a certain there's a certain sort of hesitation to do certain things or say certain things, and it's all coming from an Islamic perspective,
right.
For example, in when I see patients, sometimes some patients say, "Oh, you're seeing these patients, you're making money off of me." It just riles me up. It's like, no, I'm not doing this to make money off of your sickness,
right?
Because that's the mentality. Oh, because the healthcare is a for-profit industry, obviously, but my aqidah tells me different. This is a service. This is something that you're doing to bring shifa to people with the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and nobody else.
Well, you have certain sensitivities, like like if you have a female Muslim patient, you know how much to uncover and not to uncover.
Exactly. Yeah,
Whereas like you have a kafir doctor, he's just kind of like, oh yeah, let me just go ahead, throw this gown on, right?
No, I mean,
there's those things are real. Like I have 3 daughters. That stuff is very important to me. The adab of the doctor, the adab of the staff. Are they sensitive? Like if my wife or my girls are on the dentist the dental chair.
Sure. Yeah.
Like I want something covering their chest, put the longer thing on. I'll go to the Muslim dentist because of those sensitivities. They might not be the 5-star world's best dentist, but they're the dentists that I'm comfortable with.
Yeah. We have to have professionals in all sorts of fields to have a to be sensitive to our sensitivities. That's the nature of things. So let's take this home at the end.
Yeah, let's
wrap it up. Let me put it this way: as a family lawyer, as someone who deals with divorce, you see the worst, and sometimes I hope you see the good also, because right, you have 500 cases. Not everybody gets divorced. Somebody reconciles. Somebody just says, I think we're doing the wrong thing. Let's just go back and make this marriage work, right? In terms of the family structure and how we want to raise a family, from a lawyer's perspective who deals with the worst in this situation, what is the way forward for our families?
Subhanallah. That's a deep question. That's a deep question, man. I mean, the thing is that it's multifaceted. There's so many different levels that we can attack this issue from. I was just thinking today, it's so random. Yeah. The architecture of our homes sounds crazy, right? But they're not very family conducive in the sense that why is the nuclear family, why is that our goal? Right? I actually think that the village setup or like the multi-family setup where you have privacy but maybe a central courtyard, that should change. Like the architecture needs to change. So
you go back to in Pakistan when you had that whole India, had that whole villa where multi-family homes. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, sure. I'm a proponent of that, but I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's so multifaceted of what needs to move forward for our families. Yeah. But I think that, like you said, education is a very big component of it, right? What is the role of a man? What is the role of a woman? What is the purpose of nikah? What is Islam teaching us? Who is Allah? Do you really believe in Tawheed? Do you really believe that the hukum of Allah should be implemented in your life? Do you pray 5 times a day? Do you have that character? Do you have that patience? Do you have that manliness? Do you have these characters? Society itself making sure that we fight against these laws and legislations that are there to break down our families. I think the other thing that I'm really pushing, or I'm thinking about myself, is the MLK and the Malcolm X debate, separatist versus integrationist. More and more I'm becoming a separatist in the sense that I want our own Muslim economies. I want our own Muslim neighborhoods, in which we kind of already have. And I think really we have to place a bubble almost around our Muslim community to protect the family, to protect the individual, to protect the community. And without protecting it at all those levels, the family is going to get inundated. Obviously, media is a very big problem. I don't have a TV. I don't watch Netflix. I don't, I think all of this stuff can and will integrate your mind and take over your mind. So just like look, from the spiritual perspective, just like you're supposed to guard your heart from influences from your ears, from your eyes, from your nose, from your mouth, we have to do that from the individual, but also at our doors, right? Protect the doors, protect the TV screens, protect all these things, and control what your family and what you are actually putting into your body and putting into your mind. So, I mean, there's no answer, but I think the way forward is return to Islam, implement Islam at the family level, community level, and at the national level. Yeah,
absolutely. So Jazakallah khair. I'd like to thank Abdur-Rafay, Dr. Abdur-Rafay, for joining us and imparting words of wisdom, and NAVEED Hussain. You can Google him if you want a family lawyer services, inshallah. Inshallah.
No. He does more than just divorce.
Oh, yes. Consult him on
you do
part, right?
Wills and stuff too, right?
Yes. Okay. That's the nice part of family law. There's 2 parts of family law.
Okay.
Right, like I said, death and divorce, right?
Death and divorce. Ouch, bro.
I know. That's bad reputation.
So, inshallah. Jazakallah khair. Join us again next week when we are going to discuss Sudan and Yemen. Inshallah. Stay tuned for that episode. And assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.